Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Tuesday edition of the Stokastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. It was nice to get a couple days off on the weekend. I enjoy these shows, but 6 straight days with you guys bitching and moaning in the chat gets a little tired. No, you don't really bitch and moan, but 6 shows in a row. It's not as easy as it looks. It is a little bit tiresome. It was nice to get 2 days off. It is a shorter week this week. We'll be here Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday because it's a classic NHL schedule. But tonight we have a 13-game slate. The biggest since the frenzy on ice, which they only had 14 on the slate. I don't really like these big-ass slates, but the good news is the latest game starts at 9 p.m. Eastern, so it's kind of like a massive turbo slate. If you are on the East Coast, the games should end before midnight Eastern. If you're an old fellow like I am, that is good news. I might be able to stay up to the end of the games, but we will try to navigate you through this big slate. Joining me, as always, in his slick hoodies, Cliffy. How you doing?
Not too bad. Yeah. We mentioned it a few times this season, like those medium-sized slates, like 6 to 9, maybe even 10 games. I think those are kind of the most fun to play. When they get this big, feels kind of unmanageable. Someone has to win those. So as you like to say, can't hit the nuts if you don't play. So we're here for all 13 games, couple teams on a back-to-back, couple pretty chalky spots. There are some favorites on the board, obviously. There's no like real massive favorite. You know what I mean? There's no Edmonton going into Chicago, starting with a 14 total, and that only goes up through the day. Like there's nothing like that on the board. So kind of opens up the slate, and that's why I don't really mind it for a 13 gamer. So kind of excited to get through these games here.
Yeah, there are a couple of pretty chalky spots, and as long as there aren't multiple chalk spots nuking, there should be multiple paths to victory here tonight. But as always, we will navigate you through it. And let's get into this slate. Before we do, just wanted to say, even though I just bashed you at the intro, thank you for hanging out with us on this Tuesday afternoon, supporting us through the affiliates, just being here, liking the videos, and all that jazz, being in the Discord, talking some sauce with us. But if you do want to go premium and you're not premium and you want to get into that Discord where we talk an unbelievable, unfathomable amount of sauce, now that Haas is back, he just is ridiculous. You click that link in the chat. You can use promo code Stokastic15. That will get you 15% off your first week or month of any subscription. MMA is back. NFL playoffs are going. NHL, obviously. NBA, golf. Most of those sports have sims. NHL doesn't have sims. They did say it's possible for next year, but for now, no sims. But you can check out the tools with that link in the chat. Let's get into the slate. It's a big boy today. Tampa Bay Lightning with a 3.2 total. Heading into Boston, the Bruins have a 2.8. Charlie McAvoy and Mark Kastelik to the IR. They moved Mason Lowry to the top power play unit. Charlie Coyle is a game-time decision. If he's out, Vinny Lettieri will be on the second line. He is not in the player pool. Lightning doing some weird power play work this morning. They didn't have Braden Point on either unit. They had Kucherov on both units. I want to believe that's a little gamesmanship from John Cooper. There's no way you're going to leave off one of your best players off both power play units, but, who knows? As Wally Balls gifts 20 Stokastic sports advice memberships. That guy's nuts, by the way. I don't know if you saw my retweet, but he's literally net profited almost $170,000 in 2 months since becoming a Stokastic premium member. He's the man, and thank you for that. Getting to this slate, Tampa 1 is just way too expensive, $26,300. If those power play units are correct, Gensel's on the second unit, Point's not on either unit, and Kucherov is on the first and second unit. So for $26,300, there's no way you could prioritize them. even if they are fully correlated and rolling, it would be hard to prioritize them. They're not fully correlated. They aren't rolling to their capabilities. They have under 3 expected goals per 60 on the season. I mean, that's fine, but for those 3 guys, it seems pretty bad. If I'm playing a line from Tampa, it's Hagel, Cirelli, Atkinson. Now, I'm not 100% sure these units are even real, but that would put Hagel on the second unit, but Cirelli and Atkinson on the top unit. Like, I don't trust it at all. So, like, if I'm just going to play Tampa, I'm probably just going to go Cirelli and Hagel. You'll at least get one of them on the top unit. If they go back to their old unit, it was Hagel on the top unit and Cirelli on the second unit. I don't trust that Cam Atkinson will be on either unit or even on that line by the second period. So it would be Hagel, Cirelli for me. On the Boston side, the Boston line is coming in almost the highest owned line of the night at 13.5%. They are $10,700 cheaper than Tampa won, so that makes some sense. But at that ownership on a 13-game slate, and the line is kind of underperforming by expected goals, I just don't know. Like, I'll never say no to a Pastrnak one-off. It's a decent matchup. Like, Tampa is not a very good defensive team. But for 13% on a 13-game slate, I need this to be an overwhelmingly good line with an overwhelmingly good matchup, and it's neither. So I'm fine with the Pastrnak one-off. Zacha Pastrnak two-man. Their power play is bad, though. We'll see if Lowry helps. It can't hurt. It literally can't get worse for that power play. So we'll see how that goes. The second line, I don't really have a ton of interest. We don't know if Coyle's in or not. So really the only line that I have interest in playing in this game is Hagel Cirelli.
I'm not buying that they're going to split up the power play at all.
Me either.
I would still just assume that they're going to have the normal power play units. Maybe they take Hagel off and move Cirelli up. I'm not buying that they're leaving Braden Point off the power play. On the Boston side, I don't hate the idea of using Boston one here. That ownership sucks. Slate is big. Not super concerned about ownership. I do think that they're coming in a little bit over-owned. The reason being is that while they're a pretty good 5-on-5 line, I was just looking at their last 15 games together, 3.3 expected goals per 60. David Pastrnak has 83 shots in his last 20 games. So he's obviously still producing well enough. They're pretty good offensively at 5-on-5, but as you mentioned with the power play is awful. And maybe things do get better with Lowry. Maybe they don't. I don't think that the power play is awful because it's Charlie McAvoy. So, where the Bruins don't draw a ton of power plays, if I'm going to use an over-owned line, I want it to be in a pretty good spot, both at 5-on-5 and the power play. It's fine at 5-on-5. They're probably going to match up against the Hagel line quite a bit because that's how Boston usually runs their lines. Is Lindholm will go out against Point in them, and then Pastrnak and Zacha will go out against Hagel and Cirelli. That's not the matchup I want. Plus, the 5-on-5 matchup is pretty bad. I'm basically out on Boston. It's not, like I said, I don't mind playing an over-owned line, but it's not a good 5-on-5 matchup. It's not a good. They're almost never in a good power play matchup. That's certainly the case tonight. So, yeah, Pastrnak one off or something is fine. Other than that, I'm out. I have a lot more interest in the Tampa Bay side. The reason I have interest in the Tampa Bay side, actually, there are a lot of reasons. One, Hampus Lindholm's still out, and now they're missing Charlie McAvoy. Those are their top 2 defensemen. Now, McAvoy's not having a typical McAvoy season this year. At worst, he's still their second-best defenseman behind Hampus Lindholm. So this is a team that was allowing a lot of goals this year. How much of it is on the goalies, how much of it is on the team, I'll let other people argue, but they're allowing a lot of goals this year, especially shorthanded. And now they're missing their 2 best defensemen. The Tampa Bay power play, they have 1 goal in their last 4 games or something like that. I don't think it's enough to break it up. And Tampa Bay power play can carve them apart. They are just super expensive. That's it's the one thing that's keeping me away from really being excited about Tampa is that it's 26,300 to stack the three of them. If you're worried that they are going to actually break up the power play, then just play a one-off Kucherov or something like that. I do think this is a pretty good matchup for Tampa, which is why I think you've seen the total go from 2.9 to 3.2 over the course of the day, at least by stochastic numbers. So I do like Tampa 1. If you want to go down to Tampa 2, perfectly fine with that. I will say there are a lot of times this year where Cam Atkinson's skated on the second line at morning skate and they're just not even dressed. I know they sent down Gonsalves, so maybe this is going to be different, but basically I just had interest in the Tampa big guns, but at that price on a slate this big, I just don't have a lot of interest at all. So one off from the expensive guys, that's about it for me.
Yeah. Before we get to the next game, we have a $10 super chat from Brandon. It says, keep up the great work, fellas. I appreciate the support. I think I recognize your Avi in the Discord. I'm pretty sure you were asking about a goalie earlier. And I replied with a GIF because I'm an asshole, but we'll get to the goalies at the end. But I appreciate the support, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that super chat. We always appreciate the love. Thanks, Wally Balls, for those 20 gifts. Thanks, Brandon, for that 10. Just showing the love. We certainly always appreciate it. So thanks and good luck tonight.
Yeah, that was you. I mean, that's how I answer any question about goalies. Like, yeah, if you like a goalie, you just play them. Everyone clamoring for Cliffy's article. You can sign up for his newsletter on his Twitter. He sends that out weekly, I believe.
Yeah, usually on Tuesday mornings.
Yeah, so if you're looking for some scribing from Cliffy, check out his Twitter profile. It's free to subscribe, by the way, but you can pay if you do want to support him further. Dallas Stars with a 2.9 total heading into Toronto. The Leafs have a 2.7. I don't know what Toronto's doing, but I can tell you that Steve Lorentz is not the answer on the top line. Toronto's going Matthews, Marner, Lorentz, Nylander, Tavares, Nyes, McMahon, Domi, Robertson. Dallas going Johnson, Duchesne, Ben, Robertson, Hintz, Dodonov. I mean, like, what are we doing here? Like, literally, what are we doing here? I don't have a ton of interest in Toronto here. It's a bad matchup as it is. If it was not Lorentz and it was Nyes, you know, I would have a little interest in Toronto one here. But, like, Steve Lorentz is the Kalle Yarncroc of Chandler Stevenson's. You know what I mean? Like, what do we do? Like, if he makes it through this game, he doesn't add anything offensively. He's just kind of there. So he makes the line cheaper, but it's a bad matchup. You want to do a Matthews one-off, that's fine, but I'm pretty much out on that line. You want to explore Nylander, Tavares, Nyes in MME. I think that's fine at 18.7. The price isn't great, and you don't get great power play correlation. It's a tough matchup. But, you know, if you happen to get there in 150, sure. My interest is more on the Dallas side, and there's almost no ownership on the Dallas side either. Johnson, Duchesne, Ben, 1.8% projected. Robertson, Hintz, Dodonov, 0.8% projected. Now, I think there's a case for going to either line here. It is a pretty good power play matchup. That Johnston line has been sliding offensively. They're still creating a bunch, and they're still scoring a bunch. Obviously, they couldn't sustain, you know, their 5.4 expected goals per 60. I still think that is the line I prefer. Johnson, Duchesne, Ben at 16,500. But this is a pretty good power play spot, and Robertson has been awakened. So if you want to make it a power play stack and leave off Duchesne and add in Robertson, add in Hintz, I think I'd add in Robertson because that's the guy I would want in. I think that's fine. I think full stacking that Dallas second line is fine. I even think full stacking that Dallas first line is fine. Like, they've been fine with Dodonov there. His issues aren't really offensively. He's just kind of old. So at 15K, I'm good with either of those. I'm fine with a Dallas power play stack. Now, I don't know if I'm going to get there in single entry, but at that ownership, there's going to be a lot of lines here tonight in that 1%, 2%, 3% range. And there's no point, like, if you like a 5% line, fading them because Dallas 2 is at 1.8%. In large fields, by the time you're getting down to 5, 4, 3%, it doesn't really matter. But I do like Dallas top 6 here. I do like a power play stack. I think, if I was making 20, I'd be more likely to get some sort of Dallas power play stack in single entry. I'd probably just full stack a line, but I haven't built yet, and we'll see.
Yeah, I'm just out on Toronto. On the Dallas side, I do have interest in Dallas. Low key, it's gone kind of, even for the Toronto Maple Leafs, which are, at least in Canada, by far the most talked about team, no matter where you look, except for basically in Montreal. The Toronto Maple Leafs have been pretty bad defensively for a while now. They have given up the 4th most expected goals against per minute of any team over their last 20 games. The only teams worse are the Rangers, Sharks, and Ducks. If you look by actual goals against, they're better, but still outside the top half of the league. Like, this has been a bad defensive team for a while. Now, how much of that is Austin Matthews missing time and his injury? Now they're missing Jake McCabe. Matthews really hasn't looked, they had that one big game, where the line had like 14 points or whatever. Other than that, they haven't looked that great. So, like, William Nylander's honestly look kind of checked out. The Toronto third pair is pretty bad. And again, they're missing Jake McCabe. I'm with you. I'm more interested in the Dallas side. For me, it is Johnston, Duchesne, and Ben. 3-point, you mentioned how their expected goals numbers are sliding. They're still up near 100 minutes together at 3.7 expected goals per 60 minutes, which is really still really good.
Sliding 3.7 is
they're sliding to still be one of the best 5-on-5 lines in the league. You get 2 guys on the power play. The power play has been iffy, but it's all been shooting percentage related. And Toronto's penalty kill is another area where they've struggled. So I do like the Dallas side a lot more. Should also mention Dallas is one of the teams drawing amongst the most power plays in the league. Like, whether you look just the last 5 weeks, they're second, or on the season, they're third. So this is a good power play matchup for them. That line has been kind of humming along. I think both top lines for Dallas are very playable. I prefer the Johnston, Duchesne, Ben line. They get more ice time. They have better numbers. Both are playable, but it's Johnston, Duchesne, and Ben for me out of this game.
Yep. San Jose Sharks with a 2.4 total heading into Detroit. The Wings have a 3.2 total. This game is a scene. This is Jake Wallman's return to Detroit, where there are some rumblings they traded him because he was a locker room cancer. They think he gave up on the team. Those are just rumblings, but it does make sense when you realize that Detroit sweetened the trade by attaching a second-round pick. So this is his return here. Sharks actually have playable lines here. They're going Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund, Granlund, Zetterlund, Graf. Wenberg is back, so I don't know if he takes Barclay Goodrow's spot.
Yeah, they said he's playing with Smith and Cunnin.
Well, man, that's a little bit better than Barclay Goodrow and Cunnin, but it's still pretty bad. Detroit going Larkin, Raymond, Casper, DeBrincat, Kane, Kopp. Now, weirdly enough, there isn't a line over 5.7% projected in this game, and it is a very good power play spot, very good 5-on-5 spot. At least on the Detroit side. Like, Detroit's actually gotten better since Todd McClellan has come, but I was kind of surprised at the Detroit ownership here. Their power play has been humming since Todd McClellan has taken over, so I don't particularly love Marco Casper, so I have no issue leaving him off and adding in a DeBrincat or Kane to that top line and just straight up, three-man power play stack in there. You could just 4-man power play. You could just straight up power play stack if you want. I have no problem going Larkin, Raymond, DeBrincat, Kane, Cedar. 3 to 5 power play guys is probably where I would go if I was playing the Wings here tonight, especially at that ownership, because I was expecting double digits. Maybe you see Larkin and Raymond push double digits, and that's why with you put in Casper's ownership and it comes down to 5.7 for the trio. But I would do some sort of power play stack. It is a great power play stack. Sharks take a ton of penalties, so if you don't have the salary to get away from Casper, I think you can leave him in because it's not like the Sharks are a good 5-on-5 team either. So that will bring down the cost and it will bring down the total ownership of your line. So, I'm fine with that. On the Sharks side, the only line that I'm interested in is Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund. And I said it, I think, a couple weeks ago. I'm only interested in the Sharks if A, Wallman is playing, and B, Celebrini has line mates. And this is their most talented Celebrini line, putting Toffoli and Eklund with them. Detroit has been better defensively, but they still aren't great on the penalty kill. It is Ville Husso in net. They're coming in at 3.7% projected at 14,700. They're going to get their minutes. So, I'm fine with that Shark Celebrini line. We'll talk about defensemen on the end, but Wallman, I would probably bring Wallman along with that ride. But Detroit won, Detroit power play, and the Celebrini line for me.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to just stack Detroit 1 or Detroit 2, because they're fairly, they're basically just mid-price stacks. We don't have them projected for a lot of ownership, especially considering it's a 3.2 total. Like, I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm focusing on the 4 power play guys: Larkin, DeBrincat, Kane, Raymond. You mentioned the newsletter earlier. I talked about it this morning in that newsletter. Detroit has scored 14 power play goals in 8 games under McClellan. On the season, I think it's like 30% of their goals have come on the power play as a team. The Detroit top unit, just the top unit, because out of the 14 power play goals they've scored in 8 games, 2 have been from the second unit. Just the Detroit top power play unit has 12 goals since Christmas, and that's more than the entire New York Islanders team has on the season. Detroit is probably the most power play reliant dependent team in the NHL. So if they get 5 goals, 6 goals here tonight, like a big DFS night, I honestly don't think it's going to be because Jonathan Berggren has 2 goals and 2 assists. It's going to be because the top guys, did on the power play what they've been doing for about 3 weeks now. So it's the 4 Detroit power play guys for me. Like, if you want to do like a Larkin, Raymond, DeBrincat, and then just add Casper or add Kopp because you want to bring the average cost down, like, I'm not going to argue with that, but it's the 4 Detroit power play guys I'm really focusing on here. On the San Jose side, like, Detroit has been better defensively under McClellan. The competition hasn't been brutal. What I will say is that it's Ville Husso in net. He's not a good goalie. Like, this would kind of be like facing the Philadelphia Flyers, in that I think the Flyers have a decent defense, maybe an average penalty kill, but the goaltending's awful. That's kind of what this is. And Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund have been pretty good together this year. Just Celebrini and Toffoli. I looked at their minutes without Barclay Goodrow. Like, literally anybody but Barclay Goodrow on the wing. 2.8 expected goals, 2.8 actual goals per 60 minutes. They're scoring, it's something like 13% above league average, and their shooting percentage is under league average. So they're creating a lot, and they have been basically all season. Celebrini, Toffoli, and Eklund, I find, is an interesting line here because of the matchup, because you get 2 guys, or because it is perfectly correlated. Even as Detroit has gotten better recently, the penalty kill is still not, certainly anywhere approaching elite. I do like Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund here because it's a perfectly correlated line that is under 15K, that has a good matchup against a bad goalie. I do prefer in general, I do prefer the Detroit side a lot more, though. Like, their power play guys are in a really good spot here tonight.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Seattle Kraken with a 2.9 total heading into Pittsburgh. The Penguins have a 3.1. Michael Bunting is back in the lineup tonight after getting in a car accident the other night. Evgeny Malkin is a game-time decision. Pittsburgh going Crosby, Raquel, Rust. If Malkin's in, it'll be Malkin, Bunting, Glass. Seattle going Beniers, Schwartz, Kakko, McCann, Wright, Tolvanen, Bjorkstrand, Stevenson, Burakovsky. On the Pittsburgh side, I don't mind Pittsburgh one here. but they're going to be matched up with that Schwartz, Beniers, Kakko line. And that sample is up over 100 minutes now, and they've been very, very good defensively. 2, it is Joey Daccord in net, not Philip Grubauer, mercifully. So Pittsburgh 1 would be MME only for me. There's other lines in that price range I'd rather prioritize. And at 21.6, you don't need McKinnon minutes, but you do want 2021 there. And sometimes they are only 18, 19, 20. They're fine in MME. Bunting one-off, I think, is fine. Like, Seattle has a bad penalty kill, but they're one of the least penalized teams in the league. But the Pittsburgh power play has been better since Bunting got there. Whether the power play is any good, I mean, it's better than it was. So that's something. So I'm fine with Pittsburgh 1, the more lineups I'm making. I'm fine with Bunting one-off, the more lineups I'm making. My interest is a little bit more on the Seattle side, and it's really just price-driven, right? Beniers, Schwartz, Kakko at 13,100 coming in at 1%. You know, they've been good in that 100-minute sample. 3 expected goals, 4 actual goals. They're going to get Pittsburgh 1, who has gotten better defensively than they were 6 weeks ago. They still kind of trade chances. I have no faith in, Yari and net. And at 13-1 playing 16, 17 minutes. I'm definitely fine with that. If you can't fit them, I have no problem going to McCann, Wright, Tolvanen at 11-8 because McCann's their best winger. Shane Wright, even at this point, might be their best offensive center. Tolvanen is a good shooter. They're 11,800. I think I'd throw them in the basket of filler stacks for your more expensive lines. I'm not playing a Chandler Stevenson line. If you want to, go ahead. They're the cheapest at 10,900. It's just not something I'm willing to do. So Pitt 1 and MME, Bunting 1 off MME. I'm fine with those 2 Seattle lines if you need a cheap filler.
Yeah, I'm out on the Pittsburgh depth. I think Malkin's cooked, man. Like, that line he hasn't really done much basically since October. And, assuming Joey Daccord gets the start here tonight, it is not Philip Grubauer starting. Like, it has been a world of difference between the 2 goalies. Joey Daccord's made 24 starts this season. He hasn't given up more than 5 goals in any of them. And he's given up 3 or fewer in 20 out of 24 starts. Like, he has been really, really good for Seattle. So, I definitely don't have interest in the Pittsburgh depth. I think the Pittsburgh top line, I agree with you. I think they're playable. Honestly, there aren't really a lot of expensive lines that I'm specifically targeting here tonight, just the way that I'm approaching the slate. I'm looking more towards, that mid-price range, maybe at least, that probably under 19K. Pitt 1 has been good. I was looking at their last 10 games to see if there's any fall off. There hasn't really been. 2.9 expected goals, 3.6 actual goals. Crosby's almost 3 shots per game in his last 10. Problem is they're probably going to go up against that Matty Beniers line. And with Kakko and Schwartz there, they've been really, really good defensively. And that makes it a bad 5-on-5 matchup. As you mentioned, Seattle doesn't take many penalties. Joey Daccord's in net. I just think I feel like I say this every time Pittsburgh 1 goes off, but if Pittsburgh 1 beats me, then they beat me here tonight. It's just not a matchup that I'm particularly targeting. On the Seattle side, I do think there's more interest for me in Seattle than in Pittsburgh, just because there are some filler stacks here. Like Beniers, Schwartz, and Kakko, like I said, have been pretty good defensively. They've also been pretty good offensively. 3 expected goals, 4 actual goals per 60 minutes. Skating on the low end, Kakko's 16 and a half, 17 minutes. On the high end, Beniers 19, Beniers, Schwartz 18, 19. Beniers and Schwartz both on the same power play unit. They're 13,100. It doesn't matter what Pittsburgh line matches up against them because it's a good matchup for them. I kind of like the Seattle side better here. I would go Beniers, Schwartz, and Kakko. If you need a cheaper line, I think McCann, Wright, and Tolvanen is in play. But Beniers, Schwartz, and Kakko have really been able to control the play whenever they've been on the ice. Kakko's looked really good on Beniers' wing. That's the line I like best in this game, factoring in the price. And the fact that there's no ownership, I think this is Beniers, Schwartz, and Kakko for me.
Yeah. Anaheim Ducks with a 2.4 total. Heading into Washington, the Capitals have a 3.6. It is the largest total on the board here tonight. They're also the largest favorite on the board. Now, they kind of mixed up their lines, which kind of suck. They're going Ovechkin, Protas, Dubois, Strome, Wilson, McMichael. Troy Terry is back for the Ducks, and he's going to go back with Vetrano and Strome, McTavish, Gauthier, Fabry. I don't particularly love these 5-on-5 lines for the Capitals. Now, this is obviously a good matchup. It is also John Gibson in net. Now, he's had a good season, like we've talked about, but Lucas Dostal has had the better season. I mean, the Ducks have gotten really good goaltending on this team, considering the crap they throw out in front of them. It is still a really good power play matchup. So I think what I would do here is go Strome, Wilson, leave off McMichael and add in Ovechkin, add in a Chikrin, add in a Carlson, something along those lines, like Ovechkin, Protas, Dubois. They haven't played much together this year. Strome, McMichael, and Wilson haven't played a ton this year. McMichael's been struggling since earlier this season. I don't really like these 5-on-5 lines. I'll probably do some sort of power play stack. I probably want to get Ovechkin and Chikrin in there as well. You could just go Strome, Ovechkin, Chikrin if you want. Like, if the Caps are struggling, I have a feel like I know Strome and Ovechkin were struggling, and that's why they kind of made this switch. But, you know, I feel like if they're struggling in this game, the coach will go back to what they know, and that is Strome, Ovechkin. I do some sort of power play stack on Washington's side. On the Duck side, I don't really have a ton of interest. Terry being back is interesting because, you know, Washington isn't great defensively. The issue is their price, $15,100. It's a bit pricey. They're more expensive than that Sharks line. They have the same total. The Detroit line the Detroit top line is right in that price range. You know what I mean? So, like, if I was making 20 to 150, I'd get a couple, Ducks top line in the mix. If you need a super cheap filler, McTavish, Gauthier, Fabry is fine. If you're using like Colorado power play, you want to use Tampa, et cetera, et cetera. But really, this is a Washington game, and I just want the power play guys.
Yeah, I agree with the power play guys for Washington. One, because I also agree. I don't think these lines I don't think these players are going to be necessarily on the same lines that they started the game with. The other being is that, Anaheim does take a lot of penalties. At least they have been. 2.9 times shorthanded per game over the last 5 weeks. That is the 5th highest rate in the league. Now that's something that's gotten worse as the season's gone on. They weren't taking a lot of penalties earlier in the season. It's been more like, basically, like I said, like the last 5-6 weeks. Washington's power play has still been good. It is an expensive stack to make. But one of the reasons why I'm just going to say personally, I'm not playing Washington here tonight. I play single entry and I won't be playing the Caps. I do worry that the team is in some sort of decline. The defensive numbers with Strome and McMichael on the ice have been like absolutely atrocious. 3.5 expected goals against, 70 shot attempts against per 60 minutes in 165 minutes together. They've been getting run over. Connor McMichael, I wrote about this elsewhere, has the largest drop by individual expected goals of any player from I think it's since November 25th compared to earlier in the season. The largest drop of any player. McMichael has 21 shots on goal in his last 15 games. For a guy that was, one of the best goal scorers in the league for the first 5 or 6 weeks, he's looked a long time now. That's why I would focus on the power play guys, because I feel like if Washington's going to get there, it's going to be they're going to need at least one from the power play, and then Ovechkin gets his customary empty net goal, and then be on your way. Dubois is not a big shooter. I do worry about McMichael. Protas is fine, but I wouldn't just add him into a stack for no reason. It would be Ovechkin, Strome, and Wilson that I focus on here. On the Anaheim side, Troy Terry being back is interesting for the reason that they are a good offensive line. They're not coming in with any ownership. But again, it's that McTavish, Gauthier, Fabry line that interests me, because now they're back together. 2.7 expected goals, 2.5 actual goals per 60 in their time together. It's not great, but it's about league average, maybe a little bit better. And considering how bad Anaheim is, being a little bit better than the league average in literally any category is a miracle. And at under 10K, they're a line that fits with your Tampa Bay, that fits with your Colorado. So, like, if you do need cheap players in an expensive stack, I think Anaheim 2 is one of those that you can look towards. Especially where I do think that they're going to get a fair amount of that Strome-McMichael matchup. And like I said, they've been terrible defensively. So I don't mind Anaheim 2 here if you are playing Tampa Bay, Colorado, those types of things. But it's the Washington power play guys I like best. But like I said, I'm not going to be playing Caps forwards here tonight.
Philadelphia Flyers with a 3.3 total. Heading into Columbus, the Blue Jackets have a 3.2. This is the 3-ring circus festival of the night. Like, no matter what we do here, this game's going to kill somebody. Like, these are two teams that don't have serious goaltending. They have bad penalty kills. They aren't great defensively. Now, I will say the Flyers are actually decent defensively. It's just Ivan Fedotov is not a serious person. He's definitely a better goalie than I am. But I don't pretend to be an NHL goalie. He's not an NHL goalie. Now, the Flyers won last night at home to the Panthers 4-3 in overtime, so they're back-to-back on the road here. It's not a very far flight from Philadelphia to Columbus. I'll start on the Columbus side. Marchenko, Voronkov, Fantilli, 16,900, 6.7% projected ownership. Now, they have the same top two stack as the Konechny line. The Konechny line is double the ownership. The line with Fantilli just has not been as good as the line with Monahan, and it's not really surprising. Fantilli has struggled this season. Maybe he's not ready for this role. Now, normally I'd be like, you know what? Fully correlated, even though they're fully correlated, they like Marchenko 7,100. That price is a little tough to swallow. Normally, I'd be like, I'm just going to fade them, but the problem is Ivan Fedotov's in net, and he has a 874 save percentage on the season. So, like, I'm fine with Columbus one here just for that reason. They're fully correlated. The Columbus power play has definitely hurt without Monahan, but they still have Werenski. Fantilli is a pretty good shooter, so I'm fine with Columbus one if you want to go there. Other than that, on the Columbus side, obviously we'll get to Werenski at the defenseman. I think a Ken Johnson one-off is fine. But my interest is on the Flyers side. Now, they've scored back-to-back games with multiple power play goals for the first time since 2019. You throw that into the mix. In their last 23 games, they still only have 9 power play goals, even with the 4 in the past 2 nights or past 2 games. But it is going to be Daniil Tarasov in net. He hasn't been great. He's coming back from an injury and a conditioning stint in the AHL, and they take a ton of penalties, and their penalty kill sucks. So I'm completely fine here with Konechny, Tippett, Frost. They're $1,900 cheaper than Columbus one. 5.9% top 2 stack, 13% ownership. But I know, like, everyone's just going to be like, oh, he just hates Boston. But I'd rather play this Philly line here at 13% than Boston one at 13.5%. It just is what it is. If you aren't a believer in the fully correlated line, because, you know, their power play does suck and the last 2 games have been smoke and mirrors, I'd say you could be right. And if you want to do that, I would go down to Forrester Cates Brink. Their price hasn't moved in a month. They're 8,700 and they fit with anybody, and they've legitimately been good. They're up to a 210-minute sample now, 3 expected goals per 60, 3.7 actual, 1.7 expected goals against per 60. Like, they're just legitimately a good line. They're playing 15 minutes around that. So even though they're super cheap, I don't mind them with lines in the 18 to 20K range, because then you can get better defensemen in. But for me, my My favorite line in this game is still Konechny, Tippett, Frost. I think Columbus fine because of the goaltending matchup, but I prefer that Flyers line.
So I'll start on the Columbus side. The only line that I have interest in is the top line. This is in a spot where I'm looking at the depth options. I know that the numbers look rough for Adam Fantilli. Like if you look at the expected goals numbers and stuff like that, they don't look very good. I mentioned this in an article last week, and I talked about it on Twitter yesterday. Adam Fantilli is starting to remind me of Cole Caulfield. And here's what I mean by that. Is like if you look at Cole Caulfield a couple years ago, 3 years ago, whatever, earlier in his career, the expected goals numbers were atrocious when he was on the ice. But the team was still scoring well. And it was because they were focused, like hyper-focused on creating shot quality rather than any sort of quantity. So you were looking for backdoor passes, you were looking for cross-seam one-timers, you were looking for those types of plays that have high shooting percentages but are tough to pull off, which is why I think if you look at Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki earlier in their careers when they're on the ice, they created nothing from the front of the net. I mean, absolutely nothing. They created from the sides of the net. They created from the face-off dots because they were looking for those cross-seam passes. They were looking for those backdoor tap-ins, those types of goals. I think the exact same thing is going on with Adam Fantilli, is that he's not looking to drive to the net and create greasy rebound goals. He's looking to make those cross-seam passes or to receive them. He's looking to make those backdoor passes or to receive them. And the thing is like when you're playing with Matthew Olivier and a 37-year-old James Van Riemsdyk or whatever, the numbers aren't going to look very good. But 3.4 goals per 60 minutes playing with Voronkov and Marchenko, shooting 11%, which is a little high, but it's not extreme or anything. I think that's kind of what's going on with Fantilli here. And that's why I think like he's not, being on the top line, top power play, obviously is the best spot to be, but it's that he has two talented wingers that can kind of play the same way he does, as opposed to a Matthew Olivier or a Zach Aston Reese, or even like an old James Van Riemsdyk who just don't play that way. So I think that's why I think Adam Fantilli's goal scoring numbers are going to be higher than his expected goals numbers for the entire season. And that's why I don't mind Columbus one here, is because even though I don't think that they're going to create a ton of quantity, they are going to create some quality shots, especially when you factor in that Dmitry Voronkov is establishing himself as one of the best net front guys in the entire league. I really do like Columbus one here. Not worried about the matchups on the Flyers side with that goaltending. Flyers penalty kill has been like the best you can say is average, and especially over the last 5 or 6 weeks has not been very good. I do like Columbus one. I love our boys here tonight. On the Flyers side, I think there's a lot to like from the Flyers side too. The fact that Konechny, Tippett, and Frost is perfectly correlated, however long that lasts, is a good thing at 15K. I agree with you. I would rather play them than Boston here tonight, and it's not particularly close. I worry that they're going to get broken up at any given moment, but that is the case for basically any line that ever plays for John Tortorella in the history of hockey. So, like, if you ever want to play the Flyers, you just have to kind of deal with it. I do like that Konechny, Tippett, Frost line. I think they're very much in play. For an extra 19, I think it's 1,900. You can go play Columbus one at less than half the ownership. So I do like that Columbus line. I do like the Konechny line. Probably would rather play the Columbus side here tonight.
Yeah. I mean, if I knew Torts was going to keep that line together, I prefer the Flyers. But, like, please. Torts. Yeah. Florida Panthers with a 2.6 total heading into New Jersey. The Devils have a 3 total. Flyers lost. The Panthers lost to the Flyers last night, 4-3 in overtime. They're doing that thing where if they're losing, they move Carter Verhaeghe up into the top 6. They start him on the third line. Like, I don't know what they're doing. Like, they've had a miserable road trip. I wouldn't be shocked to see them completely just blow some shit up here tonight with their lines. And I don't know. Maurice has gotten a little over patient, but we'll see. I don't have a ton of interest in the Flyers as it is. This is a brutal matchup. I'm out on the Panthers here tonight. If they burn me, good for them. But no one's playing them. If you happen to get Barkov, Reinhart into your MME mix, sure. Like Reinhart's been a monster. But my interest is on the Devils side. It is Spencer Knight in net. He actually has been struggling of late. I think if I keep saying the Flyers, if the Panthers keep these lines, you'll see Nico Hischier go out against Barkov, and you'll see Jack Hughes go out against the Bennett line. If that is the case, I do prefer the Hughes, Bratt, Palat line here. They are expensive, so I don't think I would prioritize them in single entry. But at 4%, I think it's a pretty good play. Panthers have been pretty leaky of late. Like their blue line is in shambles right now. Spencer Knight has been struggling. I don't mind the Hughes, Bratt, Palat line. You want to go to Hischier, Meyer, Nason, I could fine, but I don't really like going up against the Barkov line. So for a little bit more expensive, I'm going to the Hughes line.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Hughes line. They're the line that I would want to target on the Florida side. Get those middle six matchups. Don't get matched up against Barkov and Reinhart, which is just an absolute grind. Hughes, Bratt, and Palat. I was looking at their recent numbers. Their last 10 games together, 2.8 expected goals, 4 actual goals per 60 minutes. Brad's been around 20 minutes, if not above. Hughes has obviously been well above 20 minutes. Brad's had a few good shooting games lately. If you can keep that up, that kind of changes how I look at that line. It's not that it's a great 5-on-5 matchup. It's actually a good power play matchup. That's what's kind of drawing me to New Jersey, is that Florida is at 3.5 times shorthanded per game over the last 5 weeks. That is actually more than Montreal, who has generally been one of the most penalized teams in the league. On the season as a whole, Florida's 4th. Now, New Jersey's power play is gone kind of cold, but they're generating a ton. They're shooting under 6% on the power play over their last 15 games. Like, if that's like 17%, which would be about normal for this team, then they were one of the best power plays in the league, as they were for like the first, 2 months of the season. So I really do like that Hughes line here. They're honestly one of the expensive lines, like above 18K, that I am considering here tonight. On the Florida side, like, it's just been a really rough go, and it's just a bad matchup. Like, Reinhart and Barkov are going to run into that Kovacevic-Siegenthaler pairing. That Florida second line has been inconsistent at best, which is why I think you've seen Carter Verhaeghe move down, though the third line itself hasn't honestly been that good. So there's just not a lot there that I have interest in stacking in single entry. Like you said, if you want to one-off Sam Reinhart or something like that, because that guy's just an absolute animal, I think that's fine. But there's nothing I'm stacking from the Florida side.
I'm like 71% sure that Sam Reinhart is Dexter. That dude, just his mannerisms scare the shit out of me. But anyway, we don't have time for that. Ottawa Senators with a 2.7 total heading into Long Island. That sucks. The Islanders have a 2.8 total. This game sucks. There's nothing I really like about this game except Lee, Barzal, Nelson have been a bag of ham. I don't even know what that means, but they've been really, really good in a small sample. Levi Merrilainen is starting for the Senators here tonight. This is another one of those mid-price lines that are getting over 10% ownership. Lee, Barzal, Nelson, 10.5% projected. They're fully correlated. I hate playing Chalk Islanders. But I think this is a night where I can handle it. It's not massive negative leverage. They've been excellent in a very small sample. Like, obviously, they're not going to keep up 10.3 actual goals. 4.8 expected goals per 60. It's a small sample. Like, you saw Dallas, that Duchesne line, get up close to 6 expected goals per 60 in a small sample. Now they're kind of regulating around 3.7. But this line has been excellent. Anders Lee has been excellent, which shouldn't be uttered in the year of 2025, but he has. there isn't really anything that I'm truly worried about from a matchup perspective. It sucks that Travis Hamonic isn't on the top pair, and it's my boy Zub and Sanderson, but like it's Miralainen in net. I don't really care. Like as long as it's not Linus Ullmark, I'm fine. Like the Islanders top line is definitely in play for me. That's the only line I have interest in on the Islanders side. I don't have interest in the Horvat line. I don't have interest in that third line. So it would be Islanders one or bust. On the Ottawa side, I really don't have a ton of interest here. Even though it is Marcus Hogberg in net. Like, if anything, it'd be Kachuk, Batherson, Norris, but they're going to run into that Lee Barzal Nelson line. And they're $3,500 more. They're kind of priced in a range where, like, I would need a bigger total at home in a better matchup. So really just Islanders top line here.
Yeah, I'll be quick on the Ottawa side. The only line that I really have interest in from the Sens is Kachuk, Batherson, and Norris. The reason for that is that, as you mentioned, one Hogberg starting, the other, even though the Islanders don't take a lot of penalties, they have a very bad penalty kill. Ottawa's power play has been, let's call it inconsistent at times this year, but they were certainly very good basically for the first couple months of the season. And they are perfectly correlated. The thing is like they're basically priced in that price range with New Jersey's Jack Hughes line, and I would rather play the Hughes line here tonight. So that's just kind of why I don't have a lot of interest in Ottawa. I think the Islanders do have two playable lines here tonight. Lee and Barzal together this year in 155 minutes. 4.2 expected goals, 4.8 actual goals per 60 minutes. It's actually preposterous. They're all in the same power play unit. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the show, Islanders power play has been very bad this year, but perfect correlation is better than no correlation. So I do think they're fine to play here. I think if I'm going to, as you mentioned, there are some over-owned lines here tonight. If I'm going to play an over-owned line, I would rather play Philly than the Islanders, but I'd rather play the Islanders than Boston. That's kind of the way I look at it. I do think Islanders 2 is kind of interesting because they did move Max Siplikov up to that line. And if there's one guy, like if there's one rookie that's kind of taken me by surprise this season, it is Siplikov. He has been really, really good. He really helped carry that Nelson Palmieri line when they weren't playing necessarily that well. I don't know why they moved him down to the bottom six, but now he's back on the second line. With him and Horvat together, the Islanders are at 3.1 expected goals, 3.5 actual goals per 60, and 135 minutes together. Now, Horvat's the only guy on the top power play unit, but like I said, their power play usually isn't very good anyways, so I'm not super concerned about it. I do think Siplikov, Palmieri, and Horvat are fine. If you do need one of those 10 to 12K fillers here tonight, I think I would actually at least consider them, but it is the Islanders top line I like best in this game.
Yeah. I hate that I like the Islanders tonight, but gotta like them at some point. Calgary Flames with a 2.5 total heading into St. Louis. The Blues have a 3.1 total. Calgary was in Chicago last night. They won 5-2 with Wolf in net. So our boy Danny V gonna be in net. Blues moved Jake Neighbors up to the top line with Thomas Buchnevich. So they're going Thomas Buchnevich, Neighbors, Kyrou, Holloway, Shen. Now, this is a game where I normally wouldn't have a ton of interest in the Blues if it was Wolf starting. But it's Danny. It's Danny V, baby. And he is not a serious player. He's had a couple good games this season, don't get me wrong, but like he is not Dustin Wolf. And this is the issue I'm kind of running into here. Like Kyrou, Holloway, Shen has been taking top comp of late. I don't know if that changes with Neighbors going to the top line, but it doesn't really matter because the Kadri line and the Backlund line have been very, very good defensively. I guess because Neighbors is up there, I would go to Thomas Buchnevich Neighbors. They're not, you don't get great power play correlation there, but it's let's be honest, we're not stacking the Blues because they have a power play that is scary enough to stack. So I'd probably go to Thomas Buchnevich Neighbors. You want to go to Kyrou, Holloway, Shen because they've been rolling. Like that's fine. it's not a very good 5-on-5 matchup. It's just they're shooting on a bad goalie. So, like, it's hard for me to prioritize that Kyrie line at 15-5 when you have the Flyers sitting right there. You have the Islanders we just talked about, right? So, like, they're fine in MME, like 20 max. I definitely have some, but in single entry, I want the matchup more than them shooting on a bad goaltender. You know what I mean? I'd rather have a good matchup going up against a decent goaltender than having a tough matchup going up against a bad goaltender, because goalies are weird creatures and they can have great games whenever they want. So I'm fine with the Blues. Don't love them. They're more of an MME play. On the Calgary side, I'd probably go to the Kadri line here. I don't love them at their price. I'd probably just go play the Capo Caco line at that point. If you do need super cheap, like Sharon Govich Peltier, I know it feels a little cheap, touting them after Peltier had like 19 goals last night. But, in 100 minutes, they have 3.4 expected goals per 60 together. I don't know much about Rory Kernans, but he is in the player pool now at min price. I don't think you need a full stack, but like a 2-man of Sharon Govich Peltier is fine if you're going very expensive elsewhere.
Yeah, I would probably go. I think for me, it's the Coleman Backlund Coronado line on the Calgary side. And the reason is that Huberdeau Kadri line was creating decent quality. That started to slide like over the last 10, 11 games. And that worries me because while they were creating quality earlier in the season, there's a much larger sample going back years of these guys in Calgary not being able to create anything together. So that's why it concerns me. Coronado, Backlund, and Coleman, their last 10 games, 3 expected goals, 3.6 actual goals. They also have much better numbers on the road because they're not tasked with the shutdown matchups. So if you're looking for that a 12-ish K line to play tonight, I think they're fine. I'm not targeting them specifically. I do like the St. Louis side quite a bit here. It's the Kyrou, Holloway, Shen line. They're starting to creep up a little bit in price, but they're not coming in with a lot of ownership. They've been awesome together. 3.1 expected goals, 3.5 actual goals in 175 minutes together. If you look at just their last 10 games, 3.2 expected goals, 4 actual goals. Small sample power play stuff looks pretty good. Calgary's, if there's one area defensively that Calgary isn't very strong in, is actually kind of bad in. It's the penalty kill, and they have Dan Vladar in net. So considering that St. Louis isn't coming in with that much ownership, 6.1% on the Shen line, I do like them here tonight. If you want to go up to if you want to go down to the Thomas line, I have no issue with that because they are cheaper. They do have a good sample together, but Kyrou, Holloway, and Shen have been playing very well. And like I said, the small sample power play numbers have looked good. If they can keep it up, we'll see. But Calgary's penalty kill has definitely not looked good, and I think that gives St. Louis a little bit of an advantage here tonight.
Yep. Vegas Golden Knights with a 3.1 total. Heading into Nashville, the Predators have a 2.9. While Cliffy was talking about that game, I went and looked. There was an interview with Bruce Cassidy not too long ago, and he confirmed that Vegas will have their full allotment of players here tonight. So that means Jack Eichel will be back here tonight, skating with Stone and Barbashev. I think that would mean that, obviously Carlson's going to move back down in between Olofsson and Dorofeyev, and then Hertl will go back down on the third line unless they move Hertl back to wing, but we'll find out. It also looks like UC Saros is a game-time decision, but Justice Inouye was the first goalie off the ice at morning skate, which generally means that is the probable starter. So I would imagine we see Justice Inouye in net here. With Eichel back, I do have a fair amount of interest in Eichel, Stone, Barbashev. You get Eichel and Stone on the top power play unit. The Nashville penalty kill has been pretty good this year, but most of that is because of Saros and goaltending related. Inouye's a pretty heavy drop off now. The Vegas power play hasn't been anything special this year, but I still do really like that line. Barbashev up there is the best iteration they probably can put up there. You can argue Dorofeyev. I don't have time to argue that, but I do have a lot of interest here in Stone Eichel. Barbashev, Carlson, Dorofeyev, like fine, but I'm just sticking to Vegas one here. On the flip side, I don't really have a ton of interest in Nashville one here at 18,000 and 8.8% projected. They are fully correlated, but Vegas just doesn't take penalties. I think they're either first or second in terms of least penalized teams in the NHL. They haven't been great in a 170-minute sample at 5-on-5. So, I think if anything, I'm going to the second line of O'Reilly, Nyquist, Hinostroza. You could do whatever you want with Hinostroza. I'm fine with, a two-man of O'Reilly, Nyquist if you need a cheap two-man. So Vegas 1, Nashville 2. Don't know if I prioritize anything on Nashville.
I don't have interest in the Vegas top line for this reason, is that Nashville has had a very good penalty kill. On the season, 6th fewest shots against per minute on the penalty kill. Over the last 5 weeks, 2nd fewest shots against per minute on the penalty kill. And as you mentioned, Vegas does not draw power plays. Over their last 5 weeks, bottom 5 by power play opportunities per game in the league. On the season, 2nd fewest power play opportunities per game in the league. So it's not a perfectly correlated line that's over 20K in a bad power play spot. Like, to me, those are just red flags where, like, if I was 20 maxing 150, then yes, I'm certainly considering in a single entry. It's one of those, it's basically the Pittsburgh situation. Like, if they beat me, they beat me. Don't have interest in Vegas top line. Assuming it's Carlson, Dorofeyev on the second line, that would be something I would have a little interest in. Get the softer matchups from Nashville's forwards and defense. Not that worried about the power play correlation, but, we're probably not going to know until warm up. So, like, I just don't have a lot of interest in Vegas here tonight. I'm going to be honest, I don't have a lot of interest in Nashville either. That top line's been on a steady downward slide. They do have good games individually. They haven't smashed a slate very often. And the numbers, like I said, have been sliding over their last 10 games. 2.4 expected goals, 53 shot attempts per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Vegas doesn't take very many penalties. Just like they don't draw, they don't take very many penalties. So unless the Nashville power play can go like 1 for 2 here or something like that, I think it's a pretty tough power play matchup for them. So I'm basically kind of out on both sides. My interest would be in Vegas 2, like a Carlson Dorofeyev 2-man, something like that, but that's basically it.
Vancouver Canucks with a 2.4 total heading into Winnipeg. The Jets have a 2.9. Philip Hronik will be back for the Canucks here tonight, going back with Quinn Hughes on that top pair. Winnipeg status quo on their lines. Vancouver going Pettersson, Besser, DeBrusk, Miller, Garland, Hoglander. Going into Winnipeg sucks. It is Connor Hellebuck tonight. I'm pretty much out on Vancouver here. My interest would be Winnipeg 1. Now they're really expensive and they're coming in under 1% projected. Now the things going for them here are, I know more recently they've seen some top competition. Generally, it's been the Winnipeg third line. Now they kind of split the time a little bit. So they will see some of that Quinn Hughes pairing here tonight. Half the time they won't. Like, I guess they're fine in MME. It is Lankinen. Vancouver's been struggling. I'm not prioritizing Winnipeg by any means, but at 0.5% projected ownership, it doesn't take much to get over the field. They're fully correlated. Some may call them the power play merchants, but they also are going to be out on the empty net, which they always seem to hit. So I'm fine with Winnipeg 1 here in MME, and that's really about it.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in MME, I do think there should be some interest in Winnipeg, like with almost no ownership. Lankinen's certainly not been the guy that he was in October, November. Maybe he can turn it around. Vancouver's still pretty good defensively. Winnipeg's just really expensive. Like, we're going to get to Colorado here in a second. Like, Colorado's coming in with more ownership, and in single entry, I'd rather just play the Avs. Other than that, like, I just don't have a ton of interest in the super expensive lines here tonight. Like, I'd almost rather play Pittsburgh than I'd rather play Winnipeg here. So I'm just kind of out on the Jets. And I don't have any interest in Vancouver. I mean, this is maybe things will get better with Philip Hronik, but this is a team where, you know, once in a while, somebody will have a good game or a couple guys will have a pretty good game. But as a team, they've just been not scoring well for several weeks. So and the thing is, it's not like there's some like in Dallas, there's times where Dallas has struggled to score, but there's still been strong underlying numbers, which is why we played them. And then they've had some good games after that. That basically doesn't exist with Vancouver. Like that Pettersson line, 1.9 expected goals in 85 minutes together. Even for a line that can break expected goals rate metrics, that is not very much. And they're not getting a ton of ice time. So I'm out on the Canucks. I'm basically out on Winnipeg unless I'm 150 maxing or something like that here tonight.
Yeah. New York Rangers with a 2.9 total. Heading into Colorado, the Avs have a 3.5. Colorado going McKinnon, Rantanen, and Drouin. Lehkonen, Colton, Middlestat. Rangers going Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere. Zibanejad, Cooley, Smith. Now, there was no update on Kreider, Hedl, but they did practice yesterday on the same line with Arthur Kaliev. We would know before lock if Kreider's in because he's on IR. They would have to activate him and make a roster move. As it is, I don't have a ton of interest in the Rangers' depth here tonight. If anything, it would be that top line, Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere, 17,600, 4.7% projected ownership. I think even if Kreider does come back, they'll still be fully correlated.
Yeah, that's the way they ran it in practice. Even with Kreider at practice, they were still running that normal top power play.
It was Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere, Zibanejad, Fox. So they are fully correlated. Now it is Blackwood in net. So, you know, it's a tough matchup. But that Colorado top line with Drouin there has been a bit of a line that trades chances. So for that instance, I don't mind the Rangers top line here at their price and their ownership. Will I get there in single entry? I'm leaning towards no, but they are in the mix. My interest is on the Colorado top line. Now, you can say what you want about the Rangers. They are pretty poor defensively. But the reason to play Colorado on top of them being bad defensively 5-on-5, even with Igor in net, is they've been taking a ton of penalties recently. And Colorado has a penalty kill that can run anybody over. So if the Rangers are going to take stupid penalties and give these Avs 3-4 chances on the power play, I don't care that it's Igor in net. There's only so much he can do. I do really like Colorado 1 here. If you are worried about Igor in net, like, I get it, and you don't want to spend $23,200 against Igor, I get it. But, you know, they're going to see that Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere line, which is giving up 2.7 expected goals against per 60, worse than league average. They send out Keandre Miller and Borgen against top comp. They haven't been great. You know what I mean? They play so many minutes, they may see other pairs. They aren't great. The only thing that can possibly stop them here is Igor, and Igor can steal a game whenever he wants. But if they're going to be bad defensively and take penalties from a macro perspective, Colorado 1 is a great play here tonight, and I do really like them.
Yeah, I'll start on the Rangers side. This is my case for playing the Rangers. Is that if you look at that 17K-ish to 20K range, there's honestly not a lot that I want to play here tonight. Out on Toronto, out on Florida, out on Ottawa, out on Vancouver. Washington, fine, but I like the power play guys better, and then that stack gets really expensive. And it's basically Columbus at 16,900. Now, I think I would rather play the Blue Jackets here tonight, but that's and New Jersey, sorry, that Hughes line. So basically, other than that, like there's the Hughes line, there's the Columbus top line. Other than that, there's not a lot that I want to target in that specific price range. And for all the struggles that the Rangers have had, like the last 10 games for that top line, still at 2.9 expected goals and 69 shot attempts per 60 minutes. Lafreniere has been flirting with 20 minutes now that he's getting top power play time. Panarin's the same. Trocheck's been getting like 22 minutes. It's a lot of ice time for a perfectly correlated line. Now, Colorado's a good defensive team. It wasn't showing earlier in the season because their goaltending was atrocious. Well, Mackenzie Blackwood has been really, really good for Colorado. So that's the one thing that's differentiating. Like for me, that's the one differentiator for the Rangers top line from Columbus is that Columbus is going to be facing what I think is a decent defensive team, especially factoring in the penalty kill and the Flyers, but with awful goaltending. Whereas the Rangers are going to be facing a pretty good defensive team with much better goaltending. That's why I basically lean Columbus over the Rangers. But I do think those two plus the Devils Hughes line are the three lines in that price range that I'm really considering here tonight. But it is a Colorado side that I do like better. McKinnon, Rantanen, and Drouin, 4.1 goals per 60 together this season. Not a huge sample because Drouin's missed quite a bit of time, but McKinnon and Rantanen, especially with the way the depth has played or not played, to be specific, McKinnon and Rantanen are playing like 24 minutes a game. Drouin is well over 20. I think they're very much in play here tonight. I'd rather play, like I said, I'd rather play them than Winnipeg. Now, they're going to come in with a lot higher ownership, but I would rather play them than Winnipeg. I would rather play them than Pittsburgh. I'm just not sure I'm going to spend up, $23K plus for a line here tonight. That's just kind of the way that I look at it. But yeah, Colorado one is obviously one of the best lines on the board. In fact, they have the highest top two stack of any line on the board here tonight, and it's honestly not even close. So I really do like Colorado one. I just don't think I'm going to be paying up that much, and I do think the Rangers top line is in play as well.
Agreed. Let's get to the last game of the night. Your Montreal Canadiens with a 2.7 total heading into Utah. The Soakers have a 3.2 total. Laine came back the other night, scored a nasty power play goal, 5-on-3. He has the most left dot power play goals on the season of anyone in 14 games. Like, he's just nasty. Newhook will be in. Pizzetta will be in because Emil Heineman got hit by a car yesterday, and he's out for a month. He's fine, but he sustained an injury. Utah going Keller, Cooley, Schmaltz, Hayton, Michelli, Doan, Bukestad, McBain, Krause. Now, you see Utah won here, 15-7, 13.7% projected ownership. For $800 more, Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky, 16-5 at 4% projected ownership. Normally, I would be like, oh, yeah, this is an easy Montreal one game. But the problem is with Laine in the lineup, they don't play as much. So, like, when Laine was out, Caulfield and Suzuki were playing 20, 21 minutes, 19, 20, 21 minutes. With Laine in, those minutes come down. Caulfield's shot rate goes down because Laine takes the lion's share on the power play. So I'm fine with Montreal one here since they are fully correlated. But if you do want power play exposure, like, you have to get Laine in there. So I would do probably just like a Laine Hudson X type of stack from Montreal. I think Montreal is fine in MME, 16,500. You just kind of hope they play 17, 18 minutes and do some damage 5-on-5. But it's not the best matchup here because Utah is actually a pretty good defensive team. 5-on-5. They might be getting John Marino back here tonight, who is one of their best defensive defensemen. The problem with Utah is they take a ton of penalties and their penalty kill isn't great. So that's why I prefer Laine, Hudson. We'll talk about defensemen. The Utah side is interesting here because that top line is fully correlated. 13.7% in that mid-price range with Detroit, with the Flyers, in that range, the Bruins. I'd rather play Utah than the Bruins here tonight. I don't know if I prefer them over, the Islanders or the Flyers. They're still in a really good spot. Montreal does take a ton of penalties. they've improved defensively, but the quantity of penalties that they take is a bit alarming. But without Dylan Guenther, Josh Doan has to take the spot on the power play. And, it's only been a couple games, but I can't imagine their power playing being as good without Guenther than it is with him. That being said, it would be Utah 1 for me. But I don't know if I'm going to prioritize them. I think, honestly, if we're going to prioritize something in this game, it would be like a line A one-off.
Yeah, just on the Utah side, they did say, I think they said it's Liam O'Brien is going to be scratched. They're bringing in Michael Carcone, and Michelli's going back to play with Krause and Bjugstad. They didn't say who's going to replace Michelli on that second line. Maybe they go 11-7 if Marino's back. So I think that's something to keep an eye out for warm-ups. These are two of the most penalized teams in the league this season. In fact, they are the two most penalized teams in the league this season. Like, they are first and second by time shorthanded per game this season. Now, Utah's been taking less as the season's worn on. Montreal really hasn't. That's kind of the problem. So if I'm focusing on anything here tonight on either side, it is the power play guys, because I do think there's a chance that we see the most power plays of any game on the board here tonight in this game. I do worry about the Utah side without Dylan Guenther on the power play. Certainly, Josh Doan, I do like him as a prospect. He's obviously not Dylan Guenther, and Guenther has been the team's best goal scorer this season. But, Utah won, perfectly playable, 15,700. Cooley and Keller do have good numbers together, 4.3 goals per 60. Now, that's shooting 16%, so I do worry they're actually more like a 3 goals per 60 line than closer to 4. But they do get good ice time. They are perfectly correlated. What I worry about, honestly, is the matchup on the Montreal side. Like, it's been a month since they put the top line back together, and in that month, the top line's at 2.8 expected goals per 60, which doesn't sound great. It is below average, but it's a lot better than it was earlier in the season. But here's the thing: is like they still give up chances. Like I said, they are below average defensively. And that second line with Laine there is below average defensively. 68 shot attempts, 3.4 expected goals, 3.3 actual goals per 60 allowed. Those are good matchups for Utah 1. So I agree with you. I do like Utah better than like Boston or something like that. If you're looking at those chalky lines, I do like them better than the Bruins. I would probably rather play Philadelphia here tonight, but I do think that they're a fine pivot away from the Flyers if you want to play them instead of Philadelphia. So I really do like that Utah top line here tonight. There's just a lot of ownership. On the Montreal side, I think that top line is playable. I just don't like the idea of making a Montreal stack without Laine because it is a good power play matchup for him. You know what I mean? So I'd almost be tempted to take out Caulfield and put Laine in his place, or take off Slafkovsky and put Laine in his place, something like that. I would be hard-pressed to make a Montreal lineup without Patrick Laine here, but the top line is in that month since they got put back together, 72 shot attempts, 2.9 expected goals, 4.2 actual goals per 60, shooting under 12%. With Heineman out and Pezzetta in, I'm thinking they're going to do the same thing that they were doing when Laine was out. And that's basically just not playing Pezzetta. And then, guys like Suzuki and Caulfield will get some more ice time. Think they're going to stay around 20 minutes. So it's both top lines for me out of this one. It's not a game where I'm looking at the depth. But if I'm making a Montreal stack, I'm not leaving Patrick Laine out. I'm putting him in some way, somehow.
Yep. Let's talk about defensemen here. Up at the top of the board, we have, no surprise, Werenski and Makar. Werenski's really expensive at 9,300. That we keep breaking new barriers for expensive defensemen here. I don't particularly love this top range with Hughes, Yossi, Hedman, Montour, Hamilton, Morrissey, and Dobson. I think Dobson's fine, but Werenski and Makar for me are easily 1-2, whatever way you want to put them. After that, I think I'd go down to Dobson and Cedar and Carlson and Schicker. And I don't know. Don't particularly love Quinn Hughes here tonight. Don't particularly love Roman Yossi. Hedman, I guess, is fine. Montour, I guess, is fine. But like, I don't think I'll be in this top range here tonight.
Yeah. I agree with the top range. There's really not a lot to like up there. Like Werenski's, he's just so expensive. Like, yes, he's playable. He's projecting extremely well. He's just unbelievably expensive at 9,300. But yes, he does have the highest projection on Stochastic here tonight. I don't mind Dobson in his matchup. Like, what worries me is they have a bad power play, but he can rack up peripherals and he's a threat for the shot bonus. So I don't mind Dobson, but it's the mid price range that I like a lot better. Jake Wallman, certainly, like if there's ever a night for a revenge narrative, this is one, but the guy just shoots and blocks shots besides that anyway. I do like Wallman. Moritz Seider obviously is in a really good matchup. I like Vince Dunn here as well. Both the Washington defensemen, Chychrun or Karlsson, whichever one you want to play. I usually prefer playing Chychrun because he's the shooter, but Karlsson's certainly very playable. Mikhail Sergachev, I worry about his minutes if Marino comes back, but again, it's a really good power play matchup for him. So I do like Sergachev here. So like Justin Falk from St. Louis is in play. Devin Taves, obviously, for Colorado, especially with Sam Girard out. He's staring down 25 minutes again. Like there are a lot of guys in that 4 to 6K range that I think I'd rather play here tonight than the super expensive options. For cheaper guys, Nate Schmidt, obviously running the power play for Florida. He's very cheap. Mason Lohrei, under 3K for Boston. He's running the power play. Adam Pelech leads all defensemen under 3K by point projection on Stochastic here tonight. Fantasy point projection, sorry. Manson is under 3K again, and with Sam Girard out, he's probably going to have to play 19, 20 minutes. Nikita Zadorov, like he might get the most minutes from Boston here tonight with McAvoy out. So he's certainly in play. Cam York is in a really good matchup against Columbus. Dylan Sandberg played, I think it was 23 or 24 minutes the other game for Winnipeg, and he's like 2,600. He's in play. Oliver Ekman-Larsson is leading Toronto defenseman in ice time since Jake McCabe went down. So, like, there are a lot of super cheap guys to like as well. And I'll mention Dante Fabro, I think is fine. You can play Philip Hronek. I'm not. Dante Fabro is certainly in play here. Matt Roy for Washington and Matt Grzelcyk from Pittsburgh running that Penguins power play.
Yeah. You could play Philip Hronek. I'm not. Let's talk about goalies here. Don't particularly love this top range if you are spending up. For me, it's between Hellebuck and Binnington. In the mid-price range, there's some more options that I like. Aiden Hill, Jake Ottinger, Andrei Vasilevsky. And if you're spending down, I honestly don't have issue with Montembeault at 7,300. Joey Decord at 7,200 makes some sense. John Gibson at 6,900. If you really want to get spicy, I guess Igor Shesterkin's fine, but at that point, I either go down to Gibson or up to Decord.
Yeah, I think of like the 8K-ish goalies here tonight. The guy I'm targeting is Binnington, just because St. Louis has been pretty good defensively since Jim Montgomery took over. And like we said, Calgary has been having some trouble creating some quality. So don't mind Binnington. Connor Hellebuck, obviously, in a good home matchup. Logan Thompson at 8,500. He's the top projected goalie. I think he's like second or third by point per dollar just because Anaheim really struggled to score. He's in play if you have the money, but he's not like my first guy in the lineup or anything like that. I think there are a couple very playable cheap goalies here tonight, like Vasilevsky against Boston. If they can shut down that Pasternak line, there's really not a lot else to really be worried about. Certainly not on the power play. Joey Decord, I think, makes a lot of sense here tonight against Pittsburgh. Like I said, Decord's been really, really good this year. And even when he loses, it's not like he gets his brains beat in. You know what I mean? It's not like he allows 6 goals on 20 shots or something. That's just not the type of goalie that he is. So I think Decord is fine. Also mention Sam Montembeault for Montreal. Like if Utah can't generate anything on their power plays without Genter, that's basically the big defensive weakness of the Habs right now. So I think Montembeault at 7,300 makes sense as well.
Yep, we will be back Thursday and Saturday this week. Short slate tomorrow. So check us out then. Who you liking for your hat trick pick?
I'm going to go Josh Harris levels of spicy here for the ultimate revenge narrative in Jake Wallman.
Oh, yes. We do love that. I am going to go the Bond villain, Patrick Laine.
I like it.
So, yeah, Bacon. We will be back on Thursday. Bacon's excited for the Jake Wallman hat trick pick. Good luck, everybody, tonight, and we'll see you in Discord and on Thursday.
Good luck tonight, everyone.